that we're considering this evening. There are a couple of errors on here as well. In the box on the right-hand side, Tariff 1 section, that's towards the top of the page, there are 3 lines that just need amending. The 3 miles figure should read £7 instead of £6.90. The 4 mile figure should read £8.50 instead of £8.40. And the 5 miles figure should read £10 instead of £9.90. A summary of the proposed tariffs are set out at Appendix 5. Obviously, the errors, though, that I've identified need to be transposed into this table as well. I can just quickly go through them. So the second column, which is headed up existing tariff, the 3 mile one should be £7, 4 mile one should be £8.50, and the 5 miles one should be £10. And then obviously in the final column on Appendix 5 there, the DHU column, right down towards the bottom, the penultimate line should be £15.20 instead of £15.60. There are a number of recommendations set out in the report, Chair, to consider the proposals submitted and decide on a number of options that we've set out there in paragraph 2.1, subsections A to D. If a change to the existing tariff is approved, to request the Strategic Director of Communities and Place to advertise the variation of the Hackney Carriage tariff, and then to delegate the Strategic Director of Communities in Place, following consultation with the Chair, authority to consider and respond to any objections received if required, and then obviously to seek further approval from committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Anybody want to speak on it? Councillor Hazelgrave.
Chair, I think it's totally reasonable for the taxi drivers to apply for an increase in their taxi fares after such a long period where they've stood still. When we consider the impact of inflation, the cost of fuel, which has rocketed and remained high. So I think it's perfectly right that they should put it forward. I also have cognizance of the fact that we should be giving weight to the recommendations or the application by the recognised union or association, and I would therefore propose that that would be the one that we would adopt. I noticed that if you just look at one figure, it's gone for a 5 mile fare, I think it's gone from £10 to £11.60, so that's an 11.6% increase over 9 years. It's not unreasonable, and I think we should go forward on that.
Councillor Ashwell.
I don't want to explain the errors.
Councillor Barker.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Much similar, really, to what Councillor Hazelgrave said. My only concern is with the number of changes that we've just heard. It's my little calculator here is not caught up with some of the changes that have been made. I mean, is there a recommendation from the officers in which we take, or are they quite happy? I mean, we normally get recommendations with anything to do with taxes, and on this occasion, we've just been presented with a load of figures, and whilst accepting that one of the unions is not recognised as such, it leaves me no alternative but to virtually say we should go with the Daytona one. But I was just wondering what the advice from the officers was.
I didn't go into the specific options. I mean, the options there are set out at 2.1. We're not making any particular recommendation to any of those four. But they are the options that you have as members. So either to make no change to the current tariff, to approve the proposal set out by DATOA, to approve the proposal set out by Derby Hackney Union, or indeed the last one, to agree and approve an alternative tariff that you want to agree between you and set. Yeah, I mean, part and part of the previous work that we've done on this is to try and get the trade associations to agree one set proposal. I mean, bearing in mind the current status of Derby Hackney Union, it's probably made the situation a little bit more straightforward this year, as we don't advise that you apply an amount of weighting to that, bearing in mind that DHU aren't properly recognised. So the only proper recognised proposal or association is DATOA. They've made a proposal. Them and DATOA and DHU have not been able to agree. So, we're leaving it with you to decide. Sorry.
In that case, Chair, may I second Councillor Hailsgrave's proposal?
Chair, could I just clarify a point around the status of the DHU? The Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act makes provision for recognised organisations or individual licence holders to propose a tariff change. What is clear is that we, as a local authority, as a licensing authority, also have a policy in place whereby we acknowledge the status of recognised unions. What the officers effectively are saying is that the DHU has not met that. To that extent, the question to be asked is whether or not the proposal that reads DHU is a valid or lawful one. My view as a lawyer is that it remains valid, but you need to consider it as a request from an individual license holder. But it still remains a valid request for you to consider. You can't just ignore it just because it's just from one individual. So there's still a choice to be made between the individual application or the DATOA application. That's the point I'm making.
I already two speakers. I'm not taking any more speakers.
I just want to move to the vote on the DATOA, Chair.
Move to vote, yeah. I'm taking the vote on the proposal. Move to vote. It be second. So those in favour of proposal by Councillor Hailsgrave? All in favour? Thank you. Carried. Next item is update on changes to taxi license administration. Mike will take us through.
Yep, that's me again, Chair. Thank you. So, members will be aware of the changes to the taxi licensing administrative system that have been recently introduced from the 1st of July. Work has continued to be undertaken on implementing these measures that were agreed by Council and the Licensing Committee. Paragraphs 4.3 and 4.4 refer to voluntary individual vehicle assessments, or VIVAs as we call them. Members will recall the introduction of a new requirement on the proprietor of both prospective and currently licensed modified vehicles to produce to us and our approved testing stations a VIVA certificate that's issued by the Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency prior to the vehicle being tested. There's two types of VIVA assessment available, basic and standard. Officers have clarified that it is the standard assessment that's the relevant standard to use in these circumstances. To undertake this assessment, the DVSA require sight of the original certificate of conformity that's issued by the undertaker of the modified works, because without this, they are unable to confirm the modified work has been undertaken competently and or safely. A number of vehicle proprietors have provided this information, but for some of us, doing so is proving a bit more difficult. That's really by means of an update to you. At present, officers do not have the delegated powers to refuse a vehicle licence if it does not satisfy the Viva requirements for modified vehicles. That power currently sits with committee, the practical significance of which is that subcommittees would need to be scheduled in order to determine such applications. Time is often critical in making such decisions, therefore approval is being sought from committee to delegate this power to licensing officers. So that's an update on Vivas. I'll perhaps finish, I've not finished the presentation yet, Councillor, all right. Paragraphs 4.5 and 4.9 refer to the basic skills tests. Members will be aware of the concerns that have been raised by existing licence holders to undertake them, in particular the perceived inequity of applying the provision and the length of time that it could take some drivers to satisfy the requirements. As reported at the last committee, officers have been working closely with Derby College in particular to understand the process involved and to make it as straightforward as possible. Some drivers have already been able to satisfy the requirements. However, what has become apparent from discussions is that some drivers will not be able to meet the requirements at all, and others will need to undertake a course of study for an extended period of time. Furthermore, some of these drivers are likely to have held a licence with the council for many years without any complaints being made about the service that they've provided. As it currently stands, pending attaining the required qualifications, there is a potential that a number of those falling into this group may remain unlicensed until satisfactory producing certification. With this in mind, members may wish to consider reviewing the decision it previously took to require existing drivers to undertake the basic skills tests in maths, English and ICT as a mandatory requirement. So that's an update on basic skills. Paragraph 4.10 refers to driver conduct at training sessions. Unfortunately, officers have felt it appropriate to highlight to you some concerns that have been raised by both Derby College and safeguarding officers of the council about the conduct of a number of drivers when attending the initial assessment for basic skills testing and the mandatory safeguarding course. There have been instances of significant disruption and unruliness by a minority of trade members, which have been sufficient enough to alarm the tutors on both of the sessions. Both sets of tutors have made it clear that should disruption continue to occur, they intend to ask the offending trade members to leave the sessions, and pointed out that where they do so, there will be no refund of any fees that may have been paid. Where this happens, the details of the offending licence holder will be sent to the licensing team for consideration of the imposition of sanctions in line with the new penalty points scheme. So that's an update in terms of driver conduct. There's also some changes, yes, that's referred to and that have been advised by the Disclosure and Barring Service, the DBS. The level of DBS checks undertaken for drivers seeking a Hackney carriage or private hire driver's licence from the council is different to the level of check that is required by such licensed drivers who elect to carry out schools contract work. In effect, the checks are not interchangeable, and the net effect of this will be that those drivers undertaking school contract work will have to undertake a separate DBS check at an additional cost. So as officers, I thought would just be worthwhile just letting members know of that situation, because it is likely to cause a few issues for drivers. There are a number of recommendations set out in the report, Chair. To note the information provided on the implementation of the changes made to the taxi licensing administration system, to approve the proposal set out in the report to change the scheme of delegation to allow officers to refuse a vehicle licence if it does not satisfy the requirements of the Viva assessment for modified vehicles, to approve the proposal set out in the report to review the decision to require existing drivers to undertake the basic skills tests in maths, English and ICT as a mandatory requirement, to note the information provided in the report about the driver conduct at training sessions and about the disclosure and barring service checks, and then a final one just to make appropriate determinations following consideration and debate to address the emerging challenges that you feel are deemed necessary and or appropriate. Thank you, Chair.
Right. Paul Hazelgate.
Chair, are we going to deal with each of the sections
That's why I
in
was going to say,
order?
you raise your hand, so
Yeah.
I think we should take one by one.
Take them one by one. So voluntary individual vehicle assessment,
Yeah.
then basic skills test, then driver conduct at training sessions, then finally DBS. Yeah?
Yeah, 2.2
Right.
first, then 2.3,
Yeah.
then
Okay.
2.4. Yeah.
Right.
So
So
let's talk on the 2.2.
I would propose that we do note the information provided, because it is information and it's there. On the second thing, I would support this because our primary concern is the safety of the public, and we must make sure there's a uniform standard which drivers comply to make sure and to give reassurance to the public that that's the case. Right? And I think it would apply, Mike, to a small number of vehicles.
Absolutely, yeah. It's not the vast majority of the licensed vehicle fleet. No.
Yeah. So I would recommend. I would suggest that we support that recommendation. Yeah. On
Hang on, are we
But you propose for vote.
speaking? Are we only allowing 4.4? Yeah, I would like to speak on 4.4.
We do it one by one.
I think we're going down there.
You know, we do one by one.
yeah,
So
we're on
we'll
the
hear this one
recommendations,
first.
Eric.
Okay,
do this
so
one first.
what you're going to speak
So he
on all,
proposing what
and then
recommendation
everyone
is.
else is one at a time going to speak on.
Right. Right.
Hang on.
I think we need to allow.
Okay, all right. We are discussing number 2.2, which is voluntary individual vehicle assessment.
We're talking about 4.4.
No, at the moment we are on 4.3.
Yeah,
You agree with it?
but simply, has anyone contacted the trades to find out what their views are on 4.4?
We're not doing 4.4, we are doing 4.3.
Okay, oh, right, okay.
Right. Can I carry on?
Yeah.
Yeah. When I understand that we've agreed to 2.1 formally. Yeah? We've noted it. We've now agreed to 2.2. I'd like to speak a bit more length on 2.3. Chair and fellow councillors, I have been concerned for some time about the recent imposition on taxi drivers of a new requirement to achieve a pass in basic English, maths and IT. I have raised these concerns several times with senior officers and the Cabinet member, Baggy Shankar, as I feel it is not a hurdle existing drivers should need to jump for their licences to be renewed. I am therefore pleased that this has been brought forward for review. Our drivers serve the public of Derby and its visitors all times of the day and night and in all weathers. They have rightly been deemed to be fit and proper persons to be taxi drivers, in some cases for many years without these qualifications. I am unaware of complaints about taxi drivers from the public which have been found correct in terms of their maths, English and IT skills, so this is not an issue. Evidence would suggest that many new applicants are already qualified through their GCSE passes at school. The qualification which is at the moment required is the same as passes at grade D or above for these 3 subjects, and anyone with such qualification already has passed this barrier. Taking into consideration all of the above, I feel that the recommendation with regards to basic skills does not go far enough tonight. I therefore propose a motion.
Thank you.
Oh, no, sorry, Maggie says. Maggie says yes. See what Maggie says.
Do we all have a copy? The General Taxi and Licensing Committee resolves that all existing drivers should be exempt from obtaining the basic skills qualification, but this requirement should remain in place for new applicants, subject to review after the 1st of July 2018, when officers will have enough information and evidence to put before the committee as to its impact on aspiring taxi licence badge holders. Do I have a seconder?
I second the motion, reserve my right to speak.
Somebody second? Yeah. All those in favour of a motion?
Yeah, just hang on a second, please. We've got to be allowed to speak on it. Ask questions on the subject. Sorry?
I'll take a vote on the motion first. So those all in favour of motion?
No, you can't just vote on a
Chair,
motion.
sorry, I just think at this moment we need to allow all members to be able to come to speak on all the items on the agenda. And if we can just do that first.
Mr. Barker. Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Chair. I've just read through the amendment that's been put forward by Councillor Earlgrave, and unfortunately, whilst I agree with the first part of it, I'm not so content with the second part of it, in as much that it is, to my knowledge, that there have been applicants in the recent past who have been subjected to requirements to take on board this English, Maths and IT test, and are subsequently being given dates by the college of November, December of this year. If they don't meet that, they go on to probably December and through into the new year. If they are not of sufficient skills, I think it's already been said today, that they have to take on board a further course to bring them up to that standard. And so therefore, somebody applying for a taxi licence in this city in October or end of September this year, possibly, quite possibly, could not be in possession of that licence if they passed everything until probably May or June or July of next year. That can't be right. That cannot be right. If we are going to put in place a regime of bringing people up to basic skills, I'll tell you now, you've talked about having GCSE up to D level. I haven't got a GCSE to my name. My school, I'm an old bugger. You know, they didn't have GCSEs when I was at school. But, so I mean, I haven't got, if I applied for a taxi licence today, I'd have to go through this procedure. And I'd be probably looking of applying now, paying all my fees out, and I might be looking at September, I say August, July, August next year. That can't be right. What's going to happen, and I've said this time and time again in this chamber, and I'm not, these guys are upstairs now, and it's unfortunate I've got to say it in their presence, but what they're going to do, they're going to go to Gedlin, they're going to go to South Derbyshire, they're going to go to East. You know, we are absolutely cutting our own throats if we put this through in that format, because basically, as I say, we are here to licence drivers in this city and protect people in this city. If they go to Gedlin, if they go to South Derbyshire, if they go to Erewash or wherever, they are not being protected from the people of this city, because basically they're licensed over there and we can't touch them. So whilst I applaud what Councillor Ezra has tried to do, we cannot separate out at this moment in time, and I'll have to have a think about it a little bit, we cannot separate out the fact that new licence holders have got this elongated process to go through, because it's just not fair on them.
Thank you. Councillor Jangir Khan.
Thank you, Chair. I think drivers has been driving in Derby for over many, many years. And I think Councillor Barker, myself, and the cross-party group that was set up to look at this, where there was members of the staff, and I was the only one, which I think you lot would understand, that I said the skills test should not be part of it. I don't know if Councillor Barker, you were there, the cross-working party group, where this was agreed. I remember you were there, Councillor Porter was there, and Councillor Ashburner was there. Yeah? So I myself, from the beginning, have been saying that this skills test, I don't think it makes sense to me. Why should a taxi driver who's been driving over 20, 30 years have to go through this test again? Are we saying that they're not capable of driving a taxi in the city, where we are saying that they need a degree to drive a taxi in Derby? I will speak on the motion later, because I'm saying, I will summarize it, but I am just speaking some of the questions that Councillor Barker has just raised. Because why I've raised that, because now seeing the crowd up there, now what we're doing is, we are trying to get credit for something that has been going on for, what, nearly 6 to 8 months. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Siraj Khan.
Thank you, Chair. Well, it seems when there's a crowd, people watching, then the sort of Tories and Lib Dems tend to want to take credit for this. Now, it seems strange to me that for a year there's been a cross-party working group. Councillor Barker and his crew haven't said anything. Councillor Ashburner hasn't said anything. Now that the Labour group is presenting a motion, which, you know, I agree with Councillor Barker, it doesn't go far enough. But at least we are presenting something which, you know, to me, all along, since July I've been on this committee, previously I wasn't, I've always said that this is wrong. You know, people who are existing taxi drivers, whether they've been driving for a year or 30 years makes no difference. But I feel it's an insult to somebody to say, well, look, you've been doing your job for 10 years, can you take a test to see if you're any good? You know, if as a driver, I would feel offended that somebody's telling me that you've done a job for 10 years very well, but we feel you need a test. Now, they do BTEC, they do NVQ. I don't think that's sufficient. But let us concentrate on what's right for the trade and not political posturing and trying to play to the gallery, because, Councillor Barker, that's all you're doing. You know, you've always been very good at it, right? But, you know, let us concentrate on what that. One at a time. As I said, I agree with Councillor Barker. It doesn't go far enough. I believe that, you know, until we have proper information, proper times, scales for this test, that even new drivers shouldn't be asked to take it. But at the very least, we should not be insulting existing taxi drivers by asking them to take this test. So, although the motion doesn't go far enough, I support it as it is, but if we can take it a little further, I'd be very supportive of that. But let us, you know, at least say to the existing taxi drivers, look, you know, you're excellent, you're doing a very good job, and you don't need to take a test.
Chair, I have got to come back here.
Okay, you can come back, yeah.
Both councillors are wrong. I was not on the working group when this decision was made. I was not on that working group, and I consistently have questioned all this going through and the potential for it in actual fact to make everybody leave this authority and go elsewhere. So they are basically wrong. I'm not posturing at all. I'm agreeing with the first part of it. I disagree with it for the youngsters, for the young drivers coming in. So I'm not posturing whatsoever, and I was not on the working group.
Thank you.
Chair,
Sorry,
if it
Chair,
helps.
if Councillor Barker is allowed to come back, then I think I should be. At the July meeting, when I suggested that maybe instead of going through this motion, we should ask them for university degrees rather than that, I didn't get any support from you, Councillor Barker.
Councillor Pike?
Chair, sorry. It might help for information for everybody and for yourself that just for clarification, Councillor Barker wasn't on the working group. It was actually Councillor Poulter that was on that working group. Councillor Pegg has asked that the motion be amended. So I'll just read out to you how it will read. The Licensing Committee resolves that the present requirement that all existing drivers should obtain the basic skills qualification by renewal of their licence be removed, subject to review after the 1st of July 2018, when officers will have enough information and evidence to put before the committee as to its impact on aspiring taxi licence badge holders. So basically the requirement, but this requirement should remain in place for new applicants has been removed, which is on the third line of the paragraph.
Yes, Chair. It's a simple thing. You know, it stops all this. Let's just remove the piece that requires new applicants to come in. It's only half a dozen words. It's a simple thing, and it makes it fair all round. And I would like to move that's the way we go down, to save all this silly petty arguing and that. So let's just get on and move it as it is, please.
Somebody second that?
Chair, sorry, we've still got members that wish to speak as well on this.
Councillor Poulter?
Yes, thank you, Chair. First thing I want to do is clarify this, so that to my knowledge, this is the first time we've had motions presented at Licensing Committee. Is it form part of the normal committee rules? What's the reason for it? Like some legal advice on the validity of putting motions to licensing committees for starters.
Thank you, Councillor Poulter. I think we're just taking them as amendments to the recommendations in the report, but we're obviously doing them as a motion, but there will be recommendations.
Okay, in that case then, is this the proposal that's set out for the committee that's considered that says in the report? At 4.9 it says a proposal is set out for committee to consider.
So in 2.3, the recommendation in the report says to approve the proposal to review the decision to require existing drivers to undertake basic skills tests, maths, English and ICT. And I think the proposal is to amend that.
I understand that's what we're doing, but I'm referring to the report in 4.9. It talks about it and it says a proposal is set out for committee to consider. 4.9.
That's right, and obviously this is your time to consider.
What's the proposal?
In the report it says to review the decision to require existing drivers to undertake the basic skills test, maths, English, ICT as a mandatory requirement, and obviously we've had the two amendments.
Sorry, I just read that as we would be hearing a recommendation or a way forward from the officers or something on the subject. Is that not the case? No? I don't understand the inclusion of that line then, in that case.
Chair.
Chair, I've not finished, Chair, yet. Thank you. In the course of the run-up to this meeting, I've seen and heard and read quite a few representations on the subject, and I have to say the content of this report barely scratches the surface of some of the concerns that I've heard and read and whatever. So the report is not good enough as far as I'm concerned, to one point. But one aspect I want to tease out is some of the comments, particularly in 4.8, where it says, what has become apparent from the discussion with Derby College is that some drivers do not have a significant ability to meet the basic skills test requirements, whether wholly or in part, and others would need to undertake a course of study of an extended period of time, etc. What are these basic skills, these basic items that mean they won't be able to pass the test, please?
Well, as I say, this is information that we've had from Derby College. So let me just run through the 5 different levels of functional skills assessments. So that's what basic skills tests are. They're often referred to as functional skills assessments. There are 5 levels. Entry level 1, information from Derby College, is no ability or understanding. Entry level 2, ability to speak, will take up to 2 years to complete. Entry level 3, pre-GCSE level, will take up to 1 year to complete. Level 1, which is obviously the level that we've required, that's a E/D grade pass at GCSE. And level 2 is a grade C or above pass at GCSE. So that gives you a bit of context in terms of the different levels of functional skills assessments that there are and where that level 1 requirement sits in that run. So 5 levels, level 1 is almost 4 out of 5. Is that the kind of info that you're looking for?
It is, Chair, but I want to know what is it that the college are saying that some of these drivers are not able to achieve? Which level is it? I mean, I'll explain where I'm coming from. Yes, I was on the working party for this, and my basic view on it is that there is a requirement, a basic need for a taxi driver to be able to speak clearly in English and communicate with their drivers. There's a basic need for a taxi driver to be able to add up, to be able to deal with the fares, and there's a basic need for them to know the way around. What I'm asking is, are the college indicating that some of the drivers that sat the test so far would not be able to pass the test to that standard?
Essentially, yes. Yes, to the level 1 standard, which is obviously the level that we've set.
So moving on from there, I don't think it's unreasonable that the driver is able to meet the standards I've mentioned. What strikes me is that it might be that the course that we're putting these people through is not the right course. It's not a purpose-designed course to test them on the abilities that we need from them as a taxi driver. So the fault here might be in the way that the course was set up. And if this resolution stops them having to do it for now, but what I'd say is we need to review what that course was doing and asking them to do. And if it's clear that some of the existing long-term drivers, they may have been driving for years, they may have had no concerns raised against them, but I still think it's appropriate for a driver to be able to speak, communicate, add up and find their way around. If the indications are that some of those aren't able to, they need the training to get them up to that, or they're not meeting the standard. So whilst I don't disagree with, because of the number of representations, I don't disagree with stopping them attending the courses for now, but the situation needs to be looked at. And going on from there, it raises some other issues. As it says in the report, we've had a number of people who've already sat the course, presumably paid their fees. What we anticipate is going to be the situation in terms of them having completed a course or started a course and paid their fees for a course that's no longer required and not evenly being applied across the trade.
We're not aware of any individual that has achieved the standards have paid out any money whatsoever. The way that it works, or the way that it, as I think I've sort of tried to set out in the report, I didn't cover it in as much detail in the presentation because obviously it was there written in the report. There are different options that people can show to achieve these levels. And I think this is the difficulty when we talk about a time period. You know, everybody is individual. They're a bit like MVQ qualifications. You know, each person may take a different amount of time to reach the set level. So in terms of the different options that we've got, for those people who have already got GCSE qualifications in Maths, English and ICT, all that they have been able to do is to provide the documentary evidence to the licensing team, and they have achieved the standard. The other sort of significant set of people are those people that have been to undertake the initial assessments at the various training establishments. We're aware of a number who have been to Derby College, and those that have achieved or shown that they are working at or above the level 1 standard as part of the initial assessment have not had to pay any money out to the college to do that. It's part and parcel of the initial assessment that the college do to see where they're at, and then if they fall below the standard, it's then to enrol them onto the course. Now for Maths and English there is no fee for that. For ICT, as we reported last time, there is a fee. We are not aware of any drivers that have failed that initial assessment who have then paid any money out to enrol on any of the courses. I mean, if that's the case, then clearly we'll need to have a look at those. They'll have to provide obviously the necessary information, but they'll have to be considered. The only obviously I suppose impact they have had is that they have gone to Derby College and they have sat for 40 minutes, an hour and a half, to do their initial assessment.
Okay, Chair. So, in essence, I'm not opposed to the proposal, not motion, the proposal as it stands, but with that caveat that this report is not detailed enough. I would like to see a report from the college detailing the issues that have been raised in terms of abilities and why it would take some of these people so long. And I would also like that report to include some detail. I want to know more detail about the disruption and the problems that some of these drivers have caused on these courses, because while it talks about if the problems persist, they would be reported to the taxi licensing people, to the taxi licensing officers. If there's examples of poor behaviour in the court already been displayed that should be reported to taxi licensing officers and then be dealt with under the point system, I need to be clear as to what the extent of that is. And ultimately, I don't move away from my view is that it's right that taxi drivers in the city, whether they're long existing drivers or new drivers or returning drivers in the city, to be able to perform their roles properly, should be able to communicate properly with taxi drivers, speaking English. They should be able to add up properly, and they should be able to find their way around. And if we're not guaranteeing that by this course, then we may need to review the situation and look at maybe preparing a purpose-made course to ensure that that's the situation. Thank you, Chair.
I know. I got to say something. I know, Councillor Ashwin, you are next. Hold on. I don't understand why we are arguing. We got proposal and the driver, existing driver, already done BTEC, they done NVQ2, why we are asking them to do this test? I don't understand this. Why? Okay, I can understand you saying new drivers, but existing drivers, they done NVQ2, they done BTEC. I don't think they need to do any more tests. Councillor Ashburn?
Thank you. What we want from taxi drivers is that they are able to converse with their customers, understand their controllers, drive around Derby and fairly reliably give change. We don't need any advanced training. What we need, I would have thought, frankly, that the knowledge test, which drivers are required to take, if they come past that, then they understand English. Okay, I'd do a bit of sums if you wanted to add to the knowledge test. And what do you want for ICT? Be able to understand how to activate a sat-nav. That's it, frankly. We're not asking people to be able to produce spreadsheets or anything like that, which has been already found to be fairly difficult by officers. So it should be part of the knowledge test. That's all. Nothing else. No NVQs, no anything else. That's precisely what we want drivers to be able to do. To talk to people, to ask... Well, thank you.
Well said. Councillor Sarashan, I got only two more speakers, no more speakers.
Very quickly, I mean, we seem to be making a mountain out of a molehill here. You know, we've had a motion, then we had amended motion, simply asking that existing drivers don't have to take this test. Now, I don't know what Councillor Poulter is on about when he says they should be able to navigate their way around the city. Well, they do a knowledge test, they do a driving test, they go to BTEC, they get NVQ. I mean, you know, we might as well just tell them, look, you need a degree from Oxford University to become a taxi driver. It just makes a mockery of what we're trying to do. And the fact of the matter is that we want to be able to control drivers in our city. What we don't want is for drivers to go into Rushcliffe or to Gedling or whatever, get a badge from there and come over here, then we don't have control over them. So this is a simple motion, and rather than, you know, sort of politicizing this, right, I think we should just vote on it. It's a very simple motion. It's been amended once, and indeed Councillor Barker has said that the original one didn't go far enough. So it's been amended. Now perhaps he can ask his colleagues to support that amendment, and let's get this over with.
The last one, Councillor Bolton, no more than 2 minutes.
I won't be more than 2 minutes, Chair, and it's, I'm glad you're sticking with your system of allowing people to come back, because it's perfectly simple what I'm saying. The content of the report and the stuff that I've seen from representations from other places, it clearly indicates that the feedback from college is that some of the taxi drivers that have started or gone for assessment give the impression that they're not able, they wouldn't be able to meet the basic criteria that's necessary. All I'm asking for is further details of that in the form of a report to the committee with some more detail, particularly about that and particularly about their behaviour. I'm not opposed to the proposal, not a motion, or the amendment to the proposal, but you can't just let it slide when we have suggestion or information, clear indication that some of the drivers that were assessed do not meet the basic skills. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Jangishan.
Just briefly, Chair, I think Councillor Porter, I don't really know what she's getting at, but you know, they've got NVQ level 2. They've done, if you know, no assessment, Councillor Porter. have you got any evidence that drivers have been coming to the licensing subcommittee where they've had an issue over the so many years that we've so that they had a problem charging customers, they didn't know their whereabouts, and they've been driving over many years.
Let's move to the vote for amending proposal.
Chair, just...
Chair, can I read the amended motion out, please? Okay, I'll read it out if I may.
Chair, just before Councillor Pegg does that, can I just pick up, because I think it appears in both current motions, this issue about existing and prospective. Could I just pick that up very quickly, please? Both the motions which you have before us have as their focus the removal of this provision in relation to existing drivers. We've heard quite a lot of representations made today about whether or not that shouldn't be extended to existing drivers as well. I'm going to try and keep this as simple as possible. And my position on it is this, as your advisor, that the justifications that supported the introduction of basic skills as a principle are the same, whether for existing or for prospective. Therefore, if the requirement is only removed for existing, it does create the inequity which the report addresses, and therefore, in my view, as your advisor, I would say it's either the basic skill stays in for both groups or it comes out for both groups.
Chair, Chair, for me, my recommendation actually removes it for everybody because it's already moved and I've taken the it out. Because the amendment that I've put through is that the General Taxi and Licensing Committee resolves that all existing drivers should be exempt from obtaining the basic skills qualification, subject to the review after the 1st of July 2018, when officers will have enough information and evidence to put before the committee as to its impact on aspiring taxi licensing badge holders. Probably that needs to come out as well then. That needs to come out as well then, please, Chair.
Chair, in essence, I think Councillor Pegg's counter proposal is fine, but the only conflict it gives rise to is if the words "all existing" remains in there. If you permit me, Councillor Pegg, what I believe it should read to give effect to all that's been debated. Is licensing committee resolves that the present requirement that drivers should obtain the basic skills qualification by renewal of their license be removed, subject to review after the 1st of July 2018, when officers have enough information and evidence to put before committee as to the impact of the scheme on aspiring taxi license badge holders. In effect, what that is saying is take it away for all. But in future, officers should come back when they have enough evidence to assess what the impact will be on new drivers. And at that time, if committee wants to, you can revisit it.
Chair, I've just got, if I can just...
Okay, Councillor
I've just got to clarify with Arlo, because if you leave in that the General Taxi Licensing Committee resolves that all drivers, those that are actually got to apply yet aren't drivers. They aren't drivers yet. So you can't... You either scrap the policy and start it again as of June next year with some further information, or in actual fact, we go with this and you've still got new drivers, still got to, in actual fact, apply and go through this rigmarole.
I think we're there, Chair, and I think we've simplified it. Working off Councillor Pegg's, I think we're about there. Working off Councillor Pegg's counter proposal. Before I read out what we have set out over here, the officer view is that the end bit of it, which is talking about bringing it back in July of next year, in case it's to be revisited, that's entirely in licensing committee's discretion anyway to do that at any time. And so we're proposing we drop that and keep it simple. So it simply reads as follows. Licensing committee resolves that the present requirements that current and prospective licensed drivers should obtain the basic skills qualification be removed.
That's why you went to university, although, and I didn't.
All in favour? Thank you very much. Can we take a vote on a 2.1 recommendation? Yeah, we haven't done that. 2.1. Are we all agreed? 2.4. Agreed. All in favor? Thank you. 2.5. Thank you. Item number 7, review of licensing team consultation policy. Sandra will take us through.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. In October 2012, the committee resolved to approve a consultation policy for licensing. The recent review was to ensure the policy was... Can you not hear me? Oh, sorry. I'm normally loud enough without. In October 2012, the committee resolved to approve a consultation policy for licensing. The recent review was to ensure the policy was up to date and fit for purpose. Attached to Appendix 2 is the revised policy. The revisions have been highlighted and there are very few. The changes relate to updating names of directorates and protection of sensitive data with regard to trade organisations. The recommendation is to approve the revised policy set out in Appendix 2. The reason is to make sure that all parties are aware of the methods the licensing team undertake consultations and ensure it is fit for purpose. Thank you.
Agree? Thank you. Thank you very much. Meeting closed. Especially thank you, Linda.